Number 3 is the power to inform through the visual. We now take truth through the eye gate, not through reason. And so it comes through the back door of the imagination. Where I think it was William Blake who said, "This life's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and goads you to believe a lie when you see with and not through the eye." We are intended to see through the eye with the conscience. Most people today see with the eye, devoid of a conscience. This life's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and goads you to believe a lie when you see with and not through the eye. So we've got a visually conditioned culture. I'm not much of a moviegoer, but people plead and beg me to see some of them so that we can respond to them. So I was cajoled and pled with and written from different parts of the world to please go and see Avatar. I wanted to say we already had 330 million of them. Why one more? But I did. Brilliant, isn't it? Brilliant in cinematography. And now English movies are just beginning to resemble Hindi movies. That's all it is. The melodrama of it. That's all. Bollywood was 30 years ahead of this kind of stuff. And 30 years ago, we'd sit and laugh at it. Now it is so engaging, you know. Isn't it interesting? A Hollywood technocrat who sees the military as the culprit for destroying lives has never bothered to ask how many souls and consciences Hollywood has destroyed. Think about it. How many lives has it destroyed with its means? Oh, but you can't go there. The well-known actor William Hurt had breakfast with me one morning in Thailand, and he's no lover of the Christian faith or whatever, quite a secular-minded man, but really we had a very personal chat. He said to me, he produced a film. He was en route to Hong Kong, and Hollywood had rejected it in one line. They could not accept it because there was no violence in it. I said, "Are you summarizing what they said? Extrapolate?" He said, no, that's the one line. They don't want it because there's no violence in it. I wonder if he told the producer of Avatar that. They didn't want it because there's no violence in it. That's what entertains. It's all coming through here, and we don't bother to think this through. And we've got a generation raised with the visual that has never cerebrally addressed these issues of systemic contradiction. And lastly, I say this, it has become a youth-oriented world as a cultural molding point, which means the young ought to really be an audience to whom we speak and how we speak to them. The question is this: how do you reach a generation that thinks with its eyes, or listens with its eyes and thinks with its feelings? How do you reach a generation that listens with its eyes and thinks with its feelings? That's the challenge. I give you just 3 simple responses, and then we'll take questions. Number 1, we are going to need an apologetic that is not merely heard, but is also seen. The apologetic will have to be seen. If the Christian life is not seen, it'll become nothing more than theoretical. Just 4 days ago in Washington, a young Indian woman, very successful, of a young family, a mother of 2, I think, immensely successful, came to me up to the front and said, "Can I talk to you?" And I was surrounded by people, so I couldn't. But as I said, "I'll call you on my way to the airport." And literally, while my colleague is taking my bags, I get on the phone and she phones me, a very well-to-do family. And I had the privilege of seeing her come to Christ right on the phone as I'm walking to the gate. And you know what she said to me? She said, "The reason I'm talking to you is because in some of the greatest struggles our family has had, it has been the Christians who've been there to help me and help me find my way through these dark nights of the soul," as you called it. What a tribute to the Christians who have sown the seed and done all of the groundwork, and then I have the privilege of just praying. And you didn't even have to pluck the fruit, you just had to keep your hand there. It was ready to fall into the hand. And so the life has to be lived. And when the life is lived, never underestimate the impact of what it is going to do. Seen, not just heard. Number 2, an apologetic that is not merely argued, but that is also felt. You cannot have a persuasive preacher if the preacher himself or herself is not coming through as being persuaded. That internal engagement of the emotion, that internal engagement of your personality, woe be to me if I preach not the gospel. That passion that is so real. It is fascinating to me when I go to the Middle East how intensely passionate the people are. They expend more energy in saying good morning than you and I would oftentimes in a whole message. The passions are very real, and therefore the passion for the gospel will also have to be real if it is to appeal to a generation that lives so much with its feelings and so much with the pathos and so much with the reality of the felt word. So I say it is to be heard. It is not merely to be heard but seen, not merely argued but also to be felt. And lastly, it is an approach that rescues not only the ends of bringing them to the knowledge of Christ, but the means where we do not compromise the word in process. It's a very important point. You cannot compromise the word in the process of bringing them over to the experience of Christ. It is very easy to do that and very difficult not to do it. That means, how do you reach a world where that which is seen and that which is real is identical? You will have to bring that life in the proclamation of the word, where what is read and heard is identical to what is with life itself. The Bible doesn't say in the beginning was video. It says in the beginning was the word. In the beginning was the word. I have often thought, why didn't Christ wait to be incarnated till we had the video camera? It would make so much sense. The Sermon on the Mount and Lazarus. If you had all the video cameras showing all that stuff, my goodness. But when the rich man finds himself asking God why he could not go back to tell his brothers, God said to him, they already have Moses and the prophets. And if they do not believe Moses and the prophets, they will not believe even if somebody comes back from the dead. The word has a lasting, abiding value as a carrier of truth. It has an abiding, lasting value as a carrier of truth. I don't know how many times I've been on a mission where I've been terrified to go in front of the audience, and one verse leaps out at you and brings the lion out inside of you. It is not just a memory, not just a picture, but that word. Your word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against you. And it is that word that cannot be broken. And it is that word that is held in high esteem here. There are many theological institutions where the word is not honored. Religion is, ideas are, but the word is relegated to something archaic and passé. And yet it is the word that Christ has given to you and to me. And from that, I make this extension. I remember some time ago telling people, I was speaking at a bar association, and many years had gone by about this story. And I was at the North Carolina Bar Association, and the head of the bar association, she was sitting next to me and said, "You must be a very brave man." I said, "Why?" She said, "You've come to people who deal with words. They're able to argue themselves out of any situation." I said, "So you're telling me I should be nervous?" She said, "Well, this is a tough audience." I said, "I understand." And I'm not sure I'm qualified to, but I'll do my best. And they sat there after lunch. It was this kind of a look, And I began by saying, I said, before I came here, something fascinating happened. I said the first 3 items on the news on CNN were this. Number one, this was during the days where a famous statement was made, it all depends on what the word is means. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so, as we do in this culture, in a salvation by survey culture by which we live, you want to find answers to anything, survey people. So the news cameraman was walking around, and the first question on his survey was, do words mean anything? Do words mean anything? Or does the speaker reserve the right to fuse every word or any word with their own meaning? And after the survey, the answer was, no, words don't actually have an objective meaning. It is the speaker that fuses meaning into the words, and that's what words really are. We speak and we decide what meaning fits into them, so that was the answer. The second question was, does morality have any point of reference? And the answer was no, each person chooses their own morality. So words had no referent, morality had no referent. You know what the third item on the news was? I said, ladies and gentlemen, the third item on the news was a warning sent to Saddam Hussein that we'll start bombing him if he doesn't stop playing his word games. The arms just dropped. I said, so if you are a peddler of words, and your words don't have objective meaning and objective value, you are manufacturing a world of your own. And when worlds collide of that nature, the impact is of cataclysmic proportions. Wasn't it Thomas Becket, the man for all seasons, when he is told to renounce his words or whatever, trying to see if I can get this story here straight, and not Thomas Becket, who am I thinking of? Thomas More, good for you. Thomas More, actually, you know what? It's one of my relatives that wrote the book. He lives in Cambridge now, an Englishman, married to one of my distant cousins. In India, we're all related. And so we just lay credit to whatever we can. So he's in prison, and his daughter comes to him and says, why don't you just say the words? Say the words in favor of the king and you'll be released. And he says, Meg, no. He says, when you give your word to somebody, you hold your life in your hands. And he said, if you should open that hand and drop your word, you shall look down and you shall never find yourself again. When you give your word to somebody, you hold your life in your hands. If you open your hands and let it drop, you shall look down and never find yourself again. Your word and my word to society will have to be consistent with what we preach. And the word that he has given to us is what we must carry within our proclamation, because that word is truth, and that word cannot be broken. So it must be seen, not just heard, must be felt, not just argued, must rescue not only the ends, but the means as well, so that the word is preserved and protected. So I'll leave that with you for openers here, and if there are any tough questions, my colleague John Jaroge will answer. All the easier ones I'll be glad to take. Thanks so much for giving me your attention. Yeah.